Welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning into GoalChat. I'm Debra Eckerling, creator of the Deb Method for Goal Setting Simplified. I am also the author of Your Goal Guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and 52 secrets for goal setting and goal getting. You can't reach your goals on your own. You need your people. So every week I bring together some of my people to dive into the topic, and I am so excited. This is something, it's a little out of my comfort zone because people who know me know I cannot and do not draw. So why wouldn't I do a show on graphic novels? And it's not just about the artistic elements, which I'm sure we will discuss, but the story and putting words out there in a different format, which I think we can say is on brand Deb. Anyway, you might be watching us as GoalChat Live or the replay, or you may even be listening to us as the GoalChat podcast on the Marketing Podcast Network. No matter how you found us, we are glad you're here. Are we not glad you're here? I'm excited. We've got a half of the Berkowitz brothers, but as he calls himself the better brother, Ben Berkowitz, whose graphic novel The Writer recently came out. We also have cartoonist Chari Pere, who has been on before. And this was great. I was figuring out the panel because I interviewed Ben and Max for my other show, Taste Buds, that we need to do something on graphic novels. And when we released the Taste Buds up, Chari commented, and I'm like, oh, well, yeah, perfect. So this is one of my favorite ways to catch up with people is, oh, we haven't seen each other in a while. Come on the show. So thrilled because I know you both know and love and appreciate this format. We're going to have fun. So Ben, why don't, before we dive in, you take a moment and introduce yourself a little bit better, because basically all I said was, you're awesome. We talked before and here you are. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll go. I am Ben Berkowitz, and again, thank you so much for having me. Max is being a bum right now and having one of his debilitating migraines, but he apologizes. We are, I guess,
and this is why I have 3 guests.
yes,
because if it's 2, it still works.
exactly, and I'm the better brother, anyways. Yeah, so Max and I, we co-created The Writer with actor Josh Gad. And it's now won a couple awards, including the Juice Awards, which we were very excited about. It's a comic book series that celebrates our Jewish heritage, our culture, the Jews who built the industry, and the power of storytelling. And the trade paperback I have right here just came out on Tuesday. So we're excited to be here. I'm excited to be here with my friend Chari.
We always love a good show and tell, right?
Yes.
Very great to see you.
Great to see you again, too. I'm cartoonist Chari Pere. I've worked on a lot of different projects. I like to do projects that make people laugh and smile and or inspire people, preferably both. So I have a little bit of a different course than a lot of people. I went to a private Jewish school for 12 years, and then I went on to fully work in comics. In college, I interned at Mad Magazine, so I have a background in humor. But these days, I spend most of my time creating comics that and animated shorts based on comics about women's reproductive health.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah,
right.
Humor and these are less humorous than what I usually do. I do a lot of comic coloring books and other projects that make people smile. But for this, I've been working on a lot of social action comics for years. My first one that I did was about one woman's story and how she got her Jewish divorce document from her abusive, cheating spouse after 10 years. And that kind of set me on a path to help realize the power of this medium, that you can not only write words, but put yourself in people's positions so that you can understand what goes on in their heads and through their eyes. It makes you feel like you're in the driver's seat and experiencing what they've gone through in a less traumatic way, because, you know, let's face it, as horrifying as comics can be, they're still a medium that are very that's very iconic, and there's a level removed from just telling pictures, just seeing pictures and having live action sequences. So, you know, when I had experienced my own traumatic situation, a miscarriage, I ended up writing a comic about it, and actress Maya Bialik shared it. And thanks to the Jewish Writers Initiative Digital Storytellers Lab, I was able to turn my comics, the first of which was my story about my miscarriage, and then subsequent comics in that series, into animated shorts, which is what I've been doing the last year. And I met Ben at Juice last year when we both, he won, he and his team were some of the winners for the Artist of the Year, and I ended up winning for Writer of the Year, and I ended up winning for Artist of the Year. So Ben and I have become fast friends since then.
That is amazing. You know, when you read, and I frequently say, you know, you can't reach your goals on your own, you need your people. There's so much power in community. And the other part is when you meet people, you never know when your paths are going to cross again, or how you can help and uplift each other. And I think, like other forms, graphic novels, they convey a story. I mean, it's not, I got to do the air quotes, comic books. These are not comic books, right? These are sharing information in a visual format that is not moving pictures.
Certainly
How's
not.
that?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely not comic books, because my son got the teaser. He read your writer book ahead of mine, and he's like,
Oh gosh.
don't you show it to my little sister. You know, he's 12, you know, he's a little older. Some comics, yeah.
No, my 4-year-old, they've tried opening up this book, and I'm like, well, let's maybe hold off a beat.
Oh my gosh. My kids, so my animated shorts that I you know, with the Jewish Writers Initiative Digital Storytellers Lab, I was able to turn my comics into animated shorts, and my kids who have lent their voices to my videos, they want to watch the videos, and I'm like, maybe not right now. They're cartoons, but they're not for kids.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask you to define graphic novel. So is that what it is, a cartoon that's not for kids? Or is there something a little bit more, a more descriptive way to jump into it? How do you define a graphic novel?
Ben, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I guess like the simplest, the most basic definition is like it's a book-length work of fiction that uses like a combination of illustrations, text to tell a story. But you know, for us, it was a way to really dive into a story, into a medium where we could explore themes, characters, and stories where you just can't do that in moving pictures, you know, in live action. You know, you just couldn't get away with it or be allowed to. So for us, you know, graphic novels gave us sort of like the freedom to explore like complex emotions and mythologies, and like the human experience. And yeah, we definitely could not have done it without our phenomenal artist, Ariel Olivetti. It was the easiest writing job because we essentially just wrote chicken scratch and gave it to him, and he made it into, you know, a masterpiece. But yeah, I'm sure Chari has a much better, more succinct definition.
Well, graphic novel,
more succinct than book-length work of fiction where you can explore themes and stories with pictures, not in live action.
Well, actually, it's not always fiction, because my work, right, you know, it's basically just a longer version of comic books. A graphic novel is more, you know, a comic book is 32 pages, or that's a book. I'm blanking out on the exact number, but you know, comics are 30-something page books, right, and then graphic novels are just longer versions of that. And you know, when I was in school, one of the first books we read was Mouse, which is certainly not, well, you know, I mentioned before that you can take material and make it a little bit softer. So in that book, you have animals parading as people, as metaphors. and Jews were the mice, and they had the cats and the pigs for representing the Germans and the Polish. And when you tell a story, you can deep dive into it without being explicit. So you can use metaphorical imagery to tell something and to make a point, or go into someone's head. So it's just, and there's all different types. There's graphic novels for kids like Dog Man and Raina Telgemeier's books. My friend from college who's did the Great Babysitters Club books and Sisters. And, there's so many different types and genres and autobiographical. So graphic novel is just a really long comic. And it's, and also to your point, Ben, it's lower budget than making movies.
Yes.
You can do whatever you
Certainly.
want here.
Exactly. And, with these like creator-owned projects, you literally have like all of the freedom in the world. Yeah, I think that was a perfect. And like you look at graphic novels like Persepolis, so you see these beautiful nonfiction stories told in exactly these metaphorical ways, or not metaphorical.
Persepolis was the direct inspiration for my style, because when I was commissioned to do my first story about the Aguna, the woman who was in her abusive marriage, they wanted me to model it on Persepolis, but I added, each comic that I do now has its own color. So it's black and white with a little bit of shading, gray or light blue. And then each comic, I just told, I'm currently working on the animated version of The Diagnosis, which is a comic I did talking about a Down syndrome diagnosis. And I use yellow and blue are the colors of the Down Syndrome Awareness Day and, the whole Down syndrome movement. So my colors in that comic my additional colors are limited to those. When I did Michael's Miscarriage, I chose green to show a different, a less feminine color. So each comic, I have an additional color to add that little bit of emphasis. So to me, I try to with iconography, I try to make the characters as simple as possible so that people can really put themselves in that position. It's a cartoon version. It's not super detailed, because this way people can envision themselves in that story.
Wow. So it really gives you a landscape a greater landscape, because you are able to use words and pictures to tell a story in your style, in a way in which, and how much of, I'm fascinated, how much of your style goes into the work. And I love that you've got your own signature. Ben, were you able to leak your style into what the artist did, or how did that work out for your project?
Yeah, I think there was definitely like a symbiosis. I mean, also working with someone as legendary as Ariel, who's done work with Marvel and DC, that's just, on another level. But I think, with this particular story and the writer, we really wanted our journey working on our first comic to come through as you progress through the story. So the pacing of the initial first issue is like kind of quick and haphazard, but it starts to improve as you move along. And then we also wanted to infuse, because with graphic novels, you can play with style, thought bubbles, dialogue. We also infused our own like notes and note taking, like how we scratch out things in a script. We added that sort of meta element into the story itself, since, the story is called The Writer. So we had to incorporate that. So, we had a lot of this incredible freedom to play with the medium of comic books. Yeah.
It sounds like it was fun.
It was such a boring opera.
I mean,
Josh is so boring. No, I mean, come on. He's the most hilarious and brilliant human on the planet. Like, he literally, before we brought him the project, we had no idea that he had an encyclopedic knowledge of Jewish folklore and mythology. We knew he was a brilliant actor, writer, but he literally knew everything beyond the Ark of the Covenant, the demon Nama. And so it was so much fun. And now I'm obsessed with Jewish magic. So I've done a deep dive into that.
Oh, that's so funny. I just went into the Houdini Museum, and
Yeah.
we just saw his dad's kittle there.
Oh,
No, not kittle, his talus. Like that was, it's just
my gosh.
so that imagery popped up. Houdini's dad's
That's amazing.
talus.
Well, and that's funny. We're working with another artist who did like a sort of fictionalized biography on Houdini, and I'm obsessed with Harry Houdini. I mean, also because he's Jewish, so
What? I'm hearing road trip next time you're on the East Coast. What?
Let's do it. Done. Sold.
And you're kind of answering this question anyway, but I'm going to ask it directly. Why would someone want to write a graphic novel as opposed to something traditional? And it sounds like because you've got a bigger sandbox, right?
I'll let Chari take that one.
First of all, some people don't love reading too many words, and that's an honest truth. So some people like reading graphic novels, and it's just a different way to process. Like, I'm a more visual person. I read tons of books, but I know plenty of people who just process things visually. So it's just a different way of getting the same information. But, there are certain things that you could, certain storytelling techniques that you can't do in a book. If you have regular illustrated books, it's basically the visuals and then one line underneath it. But with comics, with all the panels, there's different ways to draw you in and different ways for pacing a story. It's really, I like to describe a lot of times as the storyboard elements for, as if you're doing a movie, but you're just telling the storyboards. Every movie starts with a storyboard. And it's just a great way to engage all your senses. And if you're having a book, you'd have to say what someone's thinking. But here with a visual gag is that you could have the thought bubble there, so you don't have to say the inner monologue. You take away all the whole like in between words where she thought, he said. It's just a clean, quick way to go and tell a story. And personally, when I write, I don't like to expand upon details. I write more easily just the dialogue, and then I have a separate compartment in my brain for how the stories go. So a lot of times people write scripts, and then just like movie scripts with all the details and who does what, and I just separate. This is my dialogue, and then my vision, the visual part, is in my head. So it's just easier and more efficient for me to tell the story that way.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's similar for us, but writing a comic book, graphic novel, it's fun, but it caused a lot of anxiety because in film you have mise en scène where everything in the scene is designed and has a purpose and a point, but like everything is moving, so you don't really have time to sit with it. But with a comic book, every panel is highly scrutinized because everything is there, so everything has to make sense, has to have meaning and purpose, and that was like I said, caused a lot of anxiety. But it is like so much more, like it works your brain so much more having to think in like those frames. So I'm just now addicted to this process.
Oh, it's so fun. And
Yeah.
it's true. You're watching a movie or a TV show, the scenes go by so fast, especially storytelling today versus how it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's a much faster pace. Just look at Sesame Street. They can't sit still in a frame when, they used to have so much patience, these poor kids these days. But in a book, you're reading every panel and then you can put it down and you can come back to it. So you're spending more time on each frame and on each image. So there is more scrutiny than there, and you can load so many details in each little frame and little gags. I always go back to my magazine background where I'd always just be enamored at how these artists and writers built in all these gags and all these images. So every time you go back, you notice something different.
Well, isn't that kind of like fun, right? I always find that part fascinating, where you can encode information in art, which again, I have the writer gene, not the the making pictures out of thin air gene. And I also, because my tagline is goal setting simplified, I'm all about nice and easy. So even though I write nonfiction books, you know, the kind without pictures, I like to think it's an easy read because the concepts are just quickly. Now I'm envisioning my whole Debverse as if it were a cartoon. And thank you, no thank you for that rabbit hole that I'm going to completely go down at some point. What was my point? My point was, and obviously you do not need to be a writer to write graphic novels because you could bring on people. How is that? And I was at LA Times Festival of Books over the weekend. I was speaking to someone who was writing a children's book, and I think it was, she didn't like the first version. She was talking about how she had to find the right artist who shared the vision, because so you don't need to write, you don't need to be the artist, but you do need to have someone who shares your brain and vision.
Oh, yes. I mean, my first job out of college was a dream book with my dream publishing company, but the artist just had a different vision, and we ended up parting ways because, you know, it's also viewed as a partnership. So part of it is the artist has their vision, and, you know, it should come out just as close as they can. But part of it is also letting the artist have a little bit of leeway and expertise into some capacity. So it's, you know, it's almost like dating. And then when you have the right partner, you know, it just clicks. And there's a lot of collaborations between artists and writers for series, because once you have something good, you just want to keep producing it, you know, and working with that person.
No, absolutely. I mean, we really lucked out with Ariel. You know, one, that he got the material, and two, he was just, it was such a collaboration. You know, we would write a page that would be like 9 panels, and he'd be like, no. This can be done in 3 panels. And yeah, let me show you how. And he would, you know, sketch it out, and we'd be like, you're absolutely right. And, you know, there would be some pushback here and there. But it was, you know, we were very much in sync, you know, and like when we were doing this sort of underworld section of the story, you know, I originally envisioned it, you know, as like a typical, like, you know, dark, mystical, like deep purples, blacks. But when he came back, he brought in these like sort of like beautiful pastel biblical colors to the landscape, and I was like, okay, you just did it so much better and nailed it.
So that sounds like a very healthy partnership, because sometimes, you know, the artist and the writer think differently in different ways, and the artist has skills that the writer doesn't have, and vice versa. So it's great when you can talk about it, and, you know, not everything's going to be in agreement. As you said, there's pushback, in which case, you know what, like when I do that in collaboration, we ask other people for their opinion, and then we see what works with third parties, because as much as we're writing the stories for ourselves, we're also trying to get it out to people. So it really matters how people view it. So I know personally, I have my inner circle of people that I can send my work to and be like, hey, does this work? Does this not work? What do you think? I heard this feedback. Do you agree? Do you not agree? This is what I think. So even though there's 2 people, just like in any editorial process, you need to have people you can rely on and push back ideas on.
Exactly. Like I need feedback. Like when I get a note back that's like no notes, and I'm like, nope, something's wrong. This is, we got to start over. So yeah, I have like the same sort of like inner circle that I send things out to, and they're like, this is insane, you need to do this differently. I'm like, nope, now it's working.
My big thing with feedback, especially as a writer and someone who works with writers, I feel like you need to at least know it in your bones before you share your work with other people, so that way you can be objective and know if the feedback is good or not. Right? Because if you're like, oh, I had this idea to turn your goal guide into a graphic novel, what do you think? And then you guys could take me under whatever rabbit hole that is your vision. But if I don't have my vision, you could end up in, you could end up at the other side of the world, which is really funny because there's a road trip theme in that book. So it would still be on message, even if we ended up in different crazy places.
Right.
What
But to your point, though, real quick, is that, you know, even though with one story, there's many ways to go, and art is and creativity is so subjective. So, you know, Ben, you had an idea for the writer for a certain scene that wasn't wrong. And then, you know, if you went that way, that would have been probably fine too. So the end result is just the end result, but there's other ways to go. And if you change certain things, it might not change the final outcome, or maybe it would, but you know, it's creativity. That's the beauty about creativity, that it appeals to someone.
Exactly.
And that foundation piece, having that idea, having that concept, that is very Deb, because, you know, do you determine your mission, knowing what it is you want to create and why you want to create it. I think that's the fuel behind anything. Doesn't matter what medium that you're sharing your work in, or if it's work at all, maybe it's who you are and your knowledge. So need to start with that. Absolutely. And then see where you wind up with, as long as it stays in alignment. It doesn't matter where you go, because you're going to get a good result.
Absolutely.
Yep.
What is that first step, though? I've always, for anybody who's always like, oh, I've got this great idea and it's not a movie and it's not a this, maybe it's a graphic novel. What?
Oh, that is the question. It's funny because I've talked about this a few times. It's like you have these projects that you've been like developing, you know, for years, and then there will be like this idea that just comes to you, and you can't get it out of your brain, so you just like run with it. And that's, of course, the project that like moves quickly through development, production, and, you know, out into the world. And that's kind of what happened with the writer. You know, we've been working on a bunch of these other projects, and then Max and I, we watched this Marvel show called Moon Knight, and that character in the comics, his identity is tied to his Jewish identity. You know, his father is a rabbi and Holocaust survivor, and yet in the show they like completely erase that. And Max and I were talking about this one night, and we are like, this is a trend we're seeing, we got to put an end to this. So we literally came up with this character, this concept, and put together a presentation overnight and sent it out to Josh. And literally it was like the next day, he was on board. And it just, you know, that's just, you know, sometimes you just got to go with the idea and just run with it. Can't be precious. I don't know.
100%. I mean, when I did my miscarriage comic, I sat on it for a couple of years because I needed to be in an emotionally good place to tell that story. But like the time I started doing it, it just, you know, Mime shared it. It went viral. It was really well received, especially in 2017 when social media was meant for people to see each other's work and share each other's work without having to pay to play.
Yeah.
So that, you know, even for applying for my fellowship, it's one of those things where I almost didn't apply because I'd gotten a lot of rejections. I'd lost my full-time job a year before. I had so many second, third round interviews, had applied for a PJ Library fellowship and got rejected. And at that point, I was in the middle of losing 6 people in 6 weeks, and I couldn't handle wasting time. And someone had sent a reminder the day of. I saw a reminder the day of that I should submit that day. And I turned to my husband, Ellie, who's the co-producer. He edits all my work. He does all the casting for my show. Anytime we work on projects together, and he's a phenomenal editor. And I told him, you know, should I apply or should I not apply? And he said, what's the worst that could happen? So it was actually the easiest application and easiest interview process. And it was just and even launching my first videos, like when the idea is there and it's just really well, it was winning. My first few videos won a bunch of awards, ended up winning the Juice Award. It just one of the things that flowed really well. So sometimes it strikes like that, but in general, I mean, for a regular project, you know, you have an idea Lightning does not strike you immediately. You have an idea, and then if you're interested in a certain genre, you'll try to read some books around that genre to see what's out there for, what's been there, what hasn't been told, what has been told. And then personally, I make a bullet point list of what the story will be. First, like one paragraph summary, and then I flesh it out into a bullet point list of what's going to happen in all the beats in the story. And then I start with the writing, with the artist part. I sketch them out in thumbnails, and then I do tighter pencils. Although these days I mostly use my my iPad or Photoshop and my Wacom tablet, and then I do them in pencil and I ink them, a more detailed version of it, and then I do the coloring and add the lettering and all the other the boxes, the last bits of detail digitally. I used to do pen and ink, but I've got 3 kids now and time is precious, so I've just converted everything to digital. I literally take my iPad wherever I go and work on frames whenever I can.
I'm the same. I take my, iPad Procreate. But I think I love what you said. It's what's the worst that can happen is the motto, because it's what's the worst that can happen? You get rejected? Okay, move on. And someone else may eventually, pick it up, which happens. Yeah.
Because you can't get rejected if you don't put yourself out there. And if you don't put yourself out there, you also cannot get the yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And for your project, Ben, because I interviewed you guys about it, and if you go to thedebmethod.com/blog, in the recap, I will include the link so people can hear more about your backstory of creating the writer. But for that, it really was boom, boom, boom. And did you not Instagram message the artist you wanted? Am I remembering that?
I literally slid into his DMs and I was like, "Hey, how you doing, gorgeous?" No, I'm just kidding. Ariel, I sent him this long. I think Instagram ended up cutting me off, so I had to rewrite it a couple times. And yeah, I sent him this message, and he immediately responded and was like, "Love this." Brought his agent in. We had this, beautiful introduction Zoom, and, he got it. There was this slight language barrier, but yeah, we navigated it, and I still owe him. We missed our opportunity to get he's obsessed with Boston Lager. And we were supposed to grab a Boston Lager together at Comic-Con. And just because of the craziness of San Diego, we missed our chance.
So you haven't met in real life yet?
No. We met in San Diego. We did a big panel.
Right.
Insane. But we were supposed to meet up after, but things just it gets crazy. You get pulled in 500 directions. And also there are 400,000 people in an arena. So
there's that.
Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, slid into his DMs.
So the element, and I love how just really simply put that was, Chari. So the add-on or rather to adapt it for the Ben world is you get your idea, you run with it, you put together your team, and then you do all the things.
I don't necessarily put together the team first. If I'm writing a new idea, I'll keep.
No, I mean for his land, because he's not doing the art. It's great idea, develop the idea, and then you bring in the people to do the things that you don't do.
Am
I close?
Dark Horse, sent us an initial list of amazing artists, but I was like, Ariel's the only person I want to work with on this. So yeah, we were very lucky. But yeah, for us, it was about kind of building the team, since we weren't doing the artwork. Yeah.
Do you have a desire to ever do that piece of the puzzle?
Oof. No, I'll leave that to I like doodling, but
I like your doodle. You have nice doodle.
Yeah, but my brain just I don't. There's a patience that it takes to illustrate a comic, and and I think, you know, a confidence, and I don't have that.
There is a lot of patience. It's a very long
Yeah.
process. I know one of the first jobs I did out of college is at the author Gretchen Rubin, whose book, have you heard of The Happiness Project?
Yep.
Yeah, so it was #1 New York Times bestseller and on every top must-read list. And I was supposed to have a chapter of that book in a comic. I was collaborating with Gretchen. Went to my college, the School of Visual Arts, right after I'd graduated, and she asked, "Who does happy comics?" And they said, "Chari." So I ended up doing a 9-page comic with her and her quest to find a passion. And unfortunately, the editor didn't want it as part of the book. So we released it as a digital comic afterwards. But it takes a lot longer to do the illustrations than to produce the writing itself. So there's a reason why graphic novels take about 3 years from start to finish to make it out to the market. So it is a more tedious process, but for me personally, like, I love working both parts of my brain. There's some days I can't draw. Like, there's some days, for some reason, nothing's coming out the way that I envision it. And I realize, okay, it's a writing day. And there's some days I can't write. So I just sit there and mindlessly do my drawing. So it really is a productive way for me to work. Because on the days where I'm like, well, I can't do this, what can I do that's writing that's that, or what day can I do? Just put on my TV shows and just get in the zone and do my artwork,
Oh,
yeah,
so
I'm
nice.
a huge fan of the Alpha and the Beta project, because that way something is always moving forward. And it's great if they're in concert with the same goal, but if they're two different things that are completely different parts of your life, that works too, as long as you always have something moving forward, right?
Exactly.
And so what is your creative process when you're trying to ignite the spark? When you're like, this is staring at, gotta get something done. I know, Ben, you pick up the phone and call your brother, right?
Yeah. I essentially talk to Max 19 hours a day. Even when like I go on a run, Max is in my ear. But no, for me, it's actually like when I need the spark and inspiration, it's literally throwing on like Philip Glass and going on a run. And there's actually like a great soundtrack from. Did you ever see Mishima? Oh my God, Paul Schroeder. That movie's soundtrack. I just put that on and it puts me into this like cinematic like soundscape, and I just like zone out. I actually went on a run recently, got this spark for an idea about this comic book series. Literally put the ideas on paper, presentation, and sent it off to this other actor, and there seems to be some movement there. But it's just like, yeah, running really does it for me.
Oh yeah, running is great when I can. I had a shoulder issue. I'm told you can't run, so
Right.
I go hiking with friends a little bit, or really taking a break from anything creative. When I was working at an ad agency and I worked on the Red Bull account, and they made us be in a corporate office for 8 to 9 hours a day, I would make sure I was right by the beach. I'd go for a run in my break, come up with so many ideas that I can't write down because I'm running. Right. And then come back and hope I remember everything. Or, sometimes just taking a bath and just sitting there and like shutting your brain off for a little bit, or reading someone else. Or, right now I started an artist crit group. So there's a few of us who meet and we show each other our work. And I get so inspired by seeing other people. And, even if it's not being inspired directly by the idea, but being creative and being around other people sometimes will just spark my own ideas. So basically just removing myself or talking to other people are both really removing myself from the artistic process and just doing something different or getting to talk to really awesome people really help put you back in the zone.
I probably shouldn't admit this, but also playing with action figures does, like, I literally, my whole desk is like surrounded, and like sometimes I'll like reenact scenes in my head, and I'm like, yeah, that could work.
I mean,
I don't. Yeah,
that's pretty.
I'm really glad you admitted that, because it's going in the recap for sure. Thank you.
Great. I mean,
wonderful. If you looked at any creative's office, how many most of those offices have action figures for a reason, or collectibles of sorts. Like, you're not alone.
No, my kids will be like, "Oh, can I play with that?" I'm like, "No, maybe eventually, not now."
In there.
Yeah,
Collectibles do make them sound a little bit more fancy, right?
yeah, yes.
And figurines, not action figures.
Right,
Figurines.
exactly. Like, this is not a toy. This is a
Limited
statue.
edition.
Yes,
With hats.
yes. Thank you, Mondo.
Do either or both of you have, it sounds like, well, you both obviously are living your best creative life. Is there something that you want to do that you know that it's a someday, but you know that it's one of those, I call that a giggle project, something in the back of your head that you know will one day get out in the world? Do you have one of those? And what is it, if you want to share?
Yeah. Well, I definitely I'm dying to do a graphic novel series, and it's something that I'm developing now it's very early on, but I love telling stories to younger kids. So, and especially like there's this age group that's kind of missing, the middle school books are all the rage, but I really like the idea of a young adult where it's the next stage up. So I'm noodling on an idea right now that I'm really excited about. So I really want to have a series, something that it's very hard as a freelancer to go from project to project. So I like the idea of a longer series where I can go from one book to another with the same characters and develop them in different ways.
Nice.
Love that. For me, I mean, there's, I'm like so ADHD that there are like 1,000 things I want to accomplish, like by tomorrow.
Yesterday,
but,
not tomorrow. What are you talking about?
Right, yesterday, exactly. One thing, sticking within like the comic space, I desperately would love to do like an otherworld, either DC story or Marvel. Just to dip my toes into that world would be like an honor. Yeah, so whether it's Superman, Batman, I mean, come on, stories we grew up with. I love creator owned, but yeah.
That's pretty awesome. What inspires you, or is it more like a who?
Ooh.
Well, there's different ways of inspiring. Like, who inspired me to be a cartoonist? Bill Watterson. I knew I wanted to be an artist when I was 10, and then when I read Calvin and Hobbes at the age of 11, I knew I wanted to do comics. I initially started out wanting to be a comic strip artist, but then the month I graduated from SVA, from the School of Visual Arts, the first iPhone came out, and the whole industry just completely shifted. And the whole, it's not the same field that it used to be. It was already a field that was not as strong, but it really it's gotten really tough out there with the decline of newspapers and everything. So they're still figuring out how to work on that. But I mean, right now there's so many different artists and books. Mad was a big inspiration for me to show how you can tell stories in succinct ways and add little gags and insights. And there's, we mentioned Persepolis and Mouse. And these days, a lot of my peers are doing their own graphic novels. I mentioned Raina Telgemeier, another one of my friends, John Patrick Green. He has the Investigator series. Like, I go on the bookshelves and I see my friends and the people I went to college with, or I know from the National Cartoonist Society, all dipping into the graphic novel field. And it's really nice to see, to see the field expanding and telling stories. So it's great to talk to a lot of, talking to my peers now, not just the people who I've always looked up to. And also TV shows. There's a lot of TV. You can know a lot of great TV stories from different shows. Like right now, Ted Lasso just makes me happy. So I like positive storytelling and complex storytelling. So, it's not just comics. You get your inspirations from all different medium and all different stories.
Yeah, there's nothing to disagree with. I mean, you listen to an interview with Ryan Coogler recently about Sinners, how he got inspiration for all these different aspects for the eyes of the vampires, the red. He was inspired by the newest Puss in Boots movie, the villain in that, which I loved. Like, that this like director who's working on these like massive tentpole films gets inspiration from a children's animated film. And I was like, and it was very relatable because I do the same thing. I'll watch, Moana, and I got the inspiration for the underworld when they go into that underworld sequence. But the OG influence for Max and I is definitely our Papa Nana. We went, I think, I've talked about this. We used to go to their house every Friday night, from the age of 5 up until we were like 17 or 16, and we would sleep over. And, my Papa loved to draw. My Nana was a massive, like, ferocious reader. And we would just, we would watch, the Fleischer Superman draw and like Westerns, but like he would be drawing. And that was just a massive inspiration. He just like always pushed artwork because he had wished, he had really pursued it. He was so talented. He would paint all the time. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to hear other inspiration. That sounds like my experience with my dad, because he always loved to write and be creative. But growing up, when he did, it was either doctor, lawyer, accountant, pick one. So,
right.
He always talked about the time when he had a test when he was in high school to see what you should be. And they said he should go into advertising, but he never even registered because like no one really did that back then, especially in the Jewish Orthodox world. So he was, my dad's the one who gave me my first Calvin and Hobbes. My parents immediately put me in art classes when I was 6 years old because I tested well in the Jewish private school I was going to, and they said that you need to get this girl art lessons. So I wouldn't be anywhere, like you, without my family as being the initial spark in any of this. And all the work I try to do, and whether it's humorous or difficult, I always try to put that warmth that I have from my childhood and from being inspired by my family, and to share with others.
Exactly. And it's funny. My mom still wishes I had Dr. Berkowitz in my name. There was like a slight moment in time where, as a joke, I almost went for my doctorate in screenwriting. But I was like, no, this is too expensive as a joke. Family was definitely very important.
So it kind of skipped a generation in your house. Is that it? The creative encouragement.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, is creative in their own way. Like, my mom has like a beautiful sense, she's a neurotrauma nurse, but she has such an eye for design and for spatial design. Our house growing up was immaculate. Everything had a purpose, a place, and like she had a better eye than most interior decorators. And yeah, I don't know, just her style, everything. And our Papa, he was an artist. I think if he had had the opportunities to pursue it, he would have been very successful. Yeah.
I think it's so cool that you both get to be your family's legacies, and it's like, who knew? Well, the universe, apparently. It's amazing. This is the point where I like to ask my guests to gift a goal to the audience. So what is something, and I want to make it a little vague, but what is something someone could do, today, tonight, tomorrow, to either tap into their creativity, get to the drawing board. I'm never funny when I'm trying. I apologize. Or what is something that they could do really to embrace this love of the creativity that the world has to offer, that they want to get out into the world? How's that for a rambling, choose your own adventure kind of question? You're welcome. Do you want to? Oh, do you have one? I was gonna put the spotlight on Chari, but if you've got one,
no. Chari, you go.
Well, I like to give these. Even tomorrow, I'm giving a workshop in my local library where if you're struggling with an idea, or if you feel like the creative calling and you're not sure where to start, a really good way is to take a noun and take an action word, and pick something that you like and an action that you like, and figure out how to tell a story with that. So I would, I'll go to workshops with kids and I'll give column A, and it could be like school or basketball or teacher or librarian or alien or banana, and then a bunch of actions like jumping, singing, playing. So to be, a little bit more detailed, you can just, have a story about a dog who is in love, and what does that mean? And you want to tell a story about a dog being in love, and where does that go, and who's that character, and where do they, what direction will he be going? Is he in love with people? Is he in love with food? So you ask questions, and what step by step you create a story. And so in my workshops, I like have whoever attends there put it in a 1-panel or a 4-panel story, so that it feels like you're complete and you've done something and you've finished the story, because graphic novels are lots of those pages. So if you want to tell a story, who's it featuring, what are they doing, and then just put something together to tell your tale. And it could be about what, think of what you really like and what kind of stories you like to read and tell it about that.
I love that. It's storytelling simplified, very on brand. Love it.
I love that. Oh, I'm trying to think. For me, you hear all the time from like these very successful artists and writers to write every day, make a film every day, and like that, I think is like way too ambitious. Like, who has the time to do that? I think the best advice I ever got. And this was from a screenwriting course I took at NYU. And the professor was just like, just finish something, just finish it. Like, even if it's a short script, like write the whole thing. Don't worry about like how, like whether it's good or bad or who's going to enjoy it, like the audience, but just finish it. And that really helped me with everything we've been working on since, just our process, so like just not getting stuck, because usually we'll write a script and then like we'll go back and rewrite the entire thing, but at least we got that first step done.
Yes, because you cannot edit air.
Right.
Exactly. It's a proven fact, right? You need that whatever draft out in the universe, and I am completely with you on the do everything every day. There's something I talk about when I do my goal workshops. I call it the 5 of 7 rule, but it's basically giving you permission. Think about your project every day. That's totally fine. But we're humans who have busy lives. Look at your calendar and say, okay, this week I can do 3 days, or this week I can do 4 days. But when you say every day I'm going to work on something for a couple minutes, you're setting yourself up to fail. We want you to succeed. And if that means twice a week, but you actually do it twice a week, then that is success.
Yeah,
exactly. Like my good friend and colleague, Derek, he reminded me this the other day. He's he was a collegiate runner. And he was reminding me like, yes, like it's important to hit your goals training, but if like one day you're not going to be able to do the 9-mile and you only can do like a mile or 2, take that as an accomplishment that you actually just did something to move your body that day. Like, don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah. And Debra, I think one of the first time you had me there, I think the goal I gifted to people was to take 15 minutes to do something. And what's great about 15 minutes is that it's not a big commitment. And if you want to stay longer, great. And if not, that's 15 minutes under your belt that you've accomplished something for you.
Exactly. And that's the example I give when I talk about the 5 of 7 rule. If you can't do your 15 minutes and then you skip a day and then it's a half an hour and then it's 45 minutes, if you didn't have 15 minutes one day, you do not have an hour. If you don't have 15 minutes on Sunday, you certainly don't have an hour on Wednesday. But yes, that 15 minutes, even if it's a couple days a week, but to commit to it and start something so you can finish something, so you can edit something.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like you, Ben. I have a million projects I'm working on at any given time. And when you finish the project, that's what's the most important thing, just to finish it. It sounds like the Karen Carpenter, the wise words of Karen Carpenter, where, sing a song, make it simple to last your whole life long. Don't worry if it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Just sing a song.
Yes.
Just do it.
Yes. Unless you can't sing, in which case write a song. Or
sing was the metaphor.
There you go. Yeah.
Creative.
I'll sing it anyways.
I'm just trying to save the eardrums of the loved ones.
Yeah, but that's what, in that case, just pivot forever create. Some people can draw, some people can't. It's whatever, fill in your creative interest. It could be baking. It could be, anything really.
Collaging. Yeah. Anything.
Absolutely. This has been fun. Thank you guys so much. Where can people learn more about you and all of your projects? Ben?
Okay. Well, you can visit our company's website, notabillionaire.com. But for our comic, you can go to darkhorse.com and search the writer. And on Instagram, the writer comic, Berk Sketches, Berkowitz Bros, Maximus Berkowitz, and Josh Gad.
Excellent. And usually when I do the replays or the recaps, I will put everybody's website and their LinkedIn. But I think in the case of today, I will, if you go to the debmethod.com/blog, you will find the website and the Instagram links. So everybody can follow each other. I feel like there's a story behind the name Not a Billionaire.
Oh, there is. I mean, we're a social impact driven marketing, communications, and production company. And the idea originally was you don't need to be a billionaire to make a difference. We do work with some billionaires on philanthropic opportunities, so it makes it an interesting conversation.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you. And Chari, where can people learn more about you?
You can visit my website, charipere.com, CHARIPERE, Chari with a C, two E's in pair. And you can see my Unspoken cartoons on my website too, charipere.com/unspoken cartoons. Also, I have a YouTube channel for Unspoken Cartoonmentary, where you can view all the videos and behind the scenes content. Please subscribe if you feel so motivated. And my social handles are at Chari Pere Art, CHARIPEREART. So please follow me there. Say hello. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And I am at the Deb Method everywhere. And as I said before, go to the debmethod.com/blog. And I am live every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific. And GoalChat is also released as a podcast version every Thursday. So you can also subscribe to the GoalChat podcast, which is on the Marketing Podcast Network. And if you need a little bit or a lot of bit of a nudge toward your goals, you can grab a copy of your goal guide or my latest 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting, how to stay focused, grow your network, and get more done in less time. Because the secret to success is there is no one secret. So I interviewed a bunch of people to get their secrets. Me, interview, talk to people, share their knowledge. What? Yes. It is definitely my happy place. And to be able to have these wonderful conversations. Ben, Chari, this has been great fun. And I love to be able to say we had great fun talking about graphic novels, which are actually more serious than comic books or what have you. They could be whatever you want them to be. You take the spark and you run with them. And that's what being a creative is all about. What final thought do you want to leave people with? Ben, final thought?
Lean into the spark. I don't know.
I like that.
I like that too.
Yeah.
And Chari, your final thought?
I mean, I agree with the spark idea about just doing it. It's if you've so much happens in life, and if you have a goal, just sit down and give yourself the time to just go ahead and give yourself permission to go ahead and and do what you want to do, and not for anyone else, but for yourself, to get your ideas out of there. I can't tell you how many times I've had brilliant ideas and then I didn't do it and I saw it somewhere else. So if you have an idea, just get it out there, because you've got this gift that that has been given to you, and it's your job to get that out there. So the longer you take, the longer the world waits.
Love that.
I do too. I think that as creatives, but also as advocates, which you two clearly are, if you have something to say, if you've got that spark, that reason behind it, it's all the more important, because you don't know who needs to hear what you have to say. So don't keep them waiting, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Ben Berkowitz, Chari Pere, for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I am live every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And you can subscribe to at The Deb Method on YouTube and find me everywhere. So go, be creative, find that spark, and gift yourself the time you need to bring your ideas into reality. Go on out there and go for it, because we know you can do it.
And feel better, Max.
Yeah. Bye, Max. You bum. Just kidding. Love you.